Brian Kelly is out at LSU, announced hours after a humiliating loss at home against A&M. And I'm going to go through a few things here because I really like the hire prior to the start of the 22 season. You know, Grand Valley, three-state national championship games, won the last two. Central Michigan from 4-7 to 9-4. Cincinnati, 10, 11, 12 wins. Notre Dame, he wins 74% of his games, including a 2012 title appearance, the 20 playoff, the 22 playoff. And, look, Notre Dame on the whole here over a 10 plus year stretch, including the 24 season title game, obviously in 25. Like, because Notre Dame hasn't won any of these games, they just get shit on all the time as a program. And the reality is a lot of programs would trade places with them. But whenever it's Notre Dame, because so many people hate Notre Dame, because the history, the unfair advantage people felt like with the TV thing. Because I don't understand why anyone cares if they're in a conference or not. It doesn't matter, especially now with the expansion. Like if Notre Dame's going to be good in 10-2, it's like they're going to get in just like any other Power Four team would. So look, Brian Kelly had an incredible resume. So because of that and getting the gig at LSU, you're like, this makes sense. I know it's a lot of money, but Scott Woodward is a big game hunter, although those buyouts are looking rough post Jimbo and now Brian Kelly. Um, but look, after these 4 seasons and watching what we all watched, if you watched on TV on Saturday night, as much as I like the hire when it happened, I'm totally okay with him being fired. This was going in the wrong direction, and it was done. And, I don't know this, but Saturday night was so gross that it almost felt like he didn't want to be there. And I'm not sure I like even saying that because I don't know that. It's not like anybody told me, but he was so pissed off. And to notice Brian Kelly being pissed off, right? Like it's like somebody noticing me being angry in my 20s. It's like, all right, yeah, but that's like the default setting. Yeah, but I'm really noticing it now. And maybe I'm guilty of playing the results here a little bit because he was fired, not 12 hours later. But his demeanor, his conduct, everything, you're like, what the fuck is this? And if you look at the 4 years collectively, they're not bad. Most people don't lose their job if you just looked at the collective 4 years of this, right? 10-4 that first year, but they beat Bama in overtime, going for two. I know because I was there. They play in the SEC title game. They give up 50 to Georgia. So it wasn't like they were really at their level. But first year in, you win the West. That's not happening all the time, especially with Saban still around. Um, then they finished second in the division. Then they finished fourth. And you're like, okay. They still win all their bowl games, but nobody cares if it's a Citrus Bowl and not a playoff game. Um, they couldn't stop anyone defensively last year, right? They had, excuse me, when they had a Heisman winning quarterback, they couldn't stop anybody in 23. They were 86th allowed in points per game. In 24, they were a little bit better on defense, but it still wasn't good. You were still worried about it all the time. In 24, they went 1-3 against ranked teams. Marcel Reed lit them up on October 26th, which is fitting because in that game, you're like, has this team never seen a running quarterback before? Like Reed steps in for Wegman, and you're like, what? So now all of a sudden LSU's just completely lost because they have a running quarterback. Your prep is off. So you figure LSU would lick their wounds against a running quarterback. Then they play Milroe 2 weeks later, and Milroe throws 12 passes, completes 12 passes, excuse me, and Bama runs it for 311 yards. Again, I know because I was there. It was just brutal. LSU couldn't stop the only thing Alabama wanted to do. And Alabama's like, we don't even have to throw the football against these guys. This is how pathetic this defense is. So Kelly got everything he wanted. They brought in Baker at DC, who's arguably the second highest paid defensive coordinator in college football. They had the number one offseason, according to most of the rankings. The transfer portal rankings were number one. I saw maybe number two with Texas Tech at times, but it's a loaded group. And it looked like they addressed the defense and they were still grabbing receivers. And I'm thinking, like, why do they need even like there's two of these receivers? I don't even know if they need these guys. They probably could have diversified their funds to O line. Um, And you got Nussmeier coming in and the whole thing. So you're like, all right, this team is loaded up. They're ready to go. They've got an extension for the offensive coordinator. Kelly's in year 4. Bama looks like they're a bit more on the ropes. There's no one really in the SEC. And I guess with the divisions being gone, but I still can't help but like look at the SEC West and be like, who are you actually scared of? And I'd say again, I don't know that there's one team in this conference that like feels scary as we're past the halfway mark of the season. But Kelly got everything he wanted. And that didn't work either because an offense that finished 47th in points per game in 24, where you're like, well, that's not great. Not with this group. They're 99th today. This is the 99th best scoring offense in college football with this group of receivers, tight ends, running back, and Nussmeier, who, yeah, is clearly hurt at times. I mean, he just looks miserable out there. Not having no line is the biggest issue, but still, you got everything you wanted. And it's this much worse. And so you lose to Vandy. And it looks like now this defense that was a huge plus to this season, the defense carrying this offense, can't get stops against Vandy, gets lit up by A&M. Having the halftime lead against A&M was totally fluky because my guy Marcel Reed's going to throw a couple bad picks. He's just going to do it, which is why I'm still a little scared of them. But they gave Kelly everything and didn't matter. So look, this team's going to have this 25 group, and I say this a lot about LSU because it's just true, but there's probably like 10, 11 guys that are going to play like big time snap numbers in the NFL. They're going to have long NFL careers. There's dudes all over the place. And again, if you don't have the O-line, maybe none of it really matters. And that's the lesson in all this stuff. But it's not for a lack of resources. It's not for a lack of recruiting. It's not for a lack of the program being invested around it. And that's why you can point to Kelly and feel like, man, collectively these 4 years, like, is this enough to really want to do a $50 million plus buyout and get this guy out of here? Is it actually that bad? And I think it was that bad. I think it was that bad on Saturday night. And I don't usually feel that way because it was so like I was watching him going, what was your job to like, hey, I got to go to the stadium. And then every time there's a mistake, I need to scream at somebody. And I know that that's Kelly's MO, but it was almost as if like a director sat down a guys like, we're filming this movie and you're going to play this coach who on a Saturday night in Baton Rouge has the worst time anyone's ever had being a coach on the sideline. So when there's a special team screw up, you have to yell at somebody. When there's a timeout that you don't like, make sure you yell at the OC through the headset. Make sure you yell at Nussmeier because you love yelling at your quarterbacks all the time. And of course, run up to Baker anytime a third down is converted. So I did not see a guy, and again, this is a reach, but I did not see a guy because nobody has a good time getting their ass kicked, but I did not see a guy that looked like he wanted to coach there anymore. And maybe that's why LSU knew this. Now, there's all sorts of other stuff, backstory deals where there's a huge donor, huge booster, not Graves, who wasn't involved in the Kelly hiring. So therefore, he hasn't been as generous with the money. He's at odds with Woodward, who's the AD. There's another storyline where the governor, who is very right leaning, wants more say over what is going to happen with the new head coach of LSU football, which actually just kind of makes a lot of sense, Louisiana, that the governor would feel like it was his place to do something. It also could be because the AD politically leans the other way. But there's a power vacuum because there's not really a president. Apparently, I don't know. The last time I saw it was down to a handful of finalists. So it's like, so should Woodward get to pick the next coach, or is this booster who was maybe left out on the Brian Kelly hiring feel like he's now more involved with taking care of some of this buyout and that he might have the biggest say out of anybody in all of this? And I don't know who that next person is. A couple of years ago, Lane Kiffin wanted this job desperately. I don't think they wanted to get into the Lane Kiffin business. Maybe they regret it because I think there was a time where some programs would still hire Lane Kiffin. There was another time where programs wouldn't. I think everybody would hire him now. So I don't know if that's something he still wants to do. Obviously, you have to kick the tires on Saban, but I would tell you, like, if I were an AD now in this climate, I don't want to have to. It's kind of like the Phil Jackson thing with the Knicks. It's like if I have to keep offering you a more absurd contract to convince you to take the job, then really what you're telling me is that you don't even want this job. So I have to just throw you so much money that it's stupid for you to say no, but I don't know that you're going to want to take this on. And it's a big job. And you need to be on it. You have to be in it, on it every single day. to appease these kinds of fan bases, and especially with all the other nonsense swirling around what's happening with this job. Like, other than, Saban, who he can do whatever he wants, but I'm not even saying he would do it. Everybody on game day seems to think he's super happy with his life now. But if it's another big name guy that you have to convince to take it because of the structure of the contract and not just the opportunity to be the head coach in Louisiana, knowing that you do not have the in-state rival or rivals that these other schools in the SEC have, or down south in general, that's the kind of person that has to have this. So maybe it's a little unproven, but hungrier than great track record, who may decide to start counting his money and not worry about it, because that's what I saw on Saturday night.